In January 2000, two cases involving the murder of underage girls occurred consecutively on an island in the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. The two incidents were about half a month apart. Both victims had been assaulted before their deaths, but the police found no valuable clues at the crime scenes or in the bodies of the deceased. Our story begins with Bayi, the person who reported the second case. At the time, 57-year-old Bayi was a well-known tax attorney in the area. He lived with his much younger wife, Monica, who was 30 years his junior, in a private villa on the island. The couple had no children and lived a wealthy life envied by many. One day, while Bayi was jogging in a park near his home, the neighbor's pet dog, who had been running alongside him, suddenly began barking furiously and ran deep into the woods. Bayi quickly followed the dog into the trees, only to find a girl around 12 or 13 years old lying on the ground fully clothed, her eyes wide open in death. She had clearly been dead for some time. Bayi panicked. After a brief moment of shock, he rushed back home and called the police. The investigation and autopsy revealed that the victim was a local middle school student who lived nearby. Before her death, she had been assaulted. However, the police found no clues pointing to the killer, neither at the site where the body was found nor inside the body. It was evident that the murderer had planned the crime, cleaned the scene afterward, and even redressed the victim. This was the second murder of a young girl in the area within a short period. Just half a month earlier, another girl had been found dead near a slum. The two cases were strikingly similar and were likely the work of the same perpetrator. At first, Bayi seemed to have no connection to the two crimes beyond being the one who discovered and reported the second body. But further investigation revealed that both cases had hidden, intricate ties to him. In other words, Bayi was a major suspect. Could a successful, well-respected member of high society really be the cold-blooded killer who assaulted and murdered two underage girls? And if so, was his motive purely to satisfy a monstrous desire? A few days after the second incident, Bayi and his wife Monica attended a local charity event aimed at helping children. Ironically, the event was held right across the street from the local police station. Detective M.O., who was handling the girl's murder case, seized the opportunity to invite Bayi to the station to verify some witness testimonies. Bayi initially wanted to decline the invitation since he had a speech to deliver at the charity event, but Detective M.O. insisted it would only take 10 minutes. As a resident of the island, Bayi was obligated to cooperate with the police investigation. Reluctantly, Bayi left his wife and went to the station alone. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, Detective M.O. got straight to the point and accused Bayi of lying. You see, Bayi had claimed that he found the body while jogging with the neighbor's dog. But when police interviewed his neighbors, they all said they only saw Bayi jogging alone that morning. No one saw a dog with him. What's more, no dog tracks were found near the body. Bayi was furious at the accusation but tried to explain calmly. He said he had encountered the neighbor's dog on a secluded path in the park just before discovering the body. The dog was familiar with him and ran alongside him for a bit. Just a few minutes later, the dog suddenly dashed into the woods barking wildly, and Bayi followed it, only to discover the body. As for the lack of paw prints, Bayi said the ground was covered in leaves, so it was normal that no tracks were left behind. Detective M.O. remained skeptical of Bayi's story. He had a gut feeling that this well-mannered gentleman was hiding something, especially when Bayi became noticeably flustered and incoherent after being shown a photo of the deceased girl. Detective M.O. then asked whether Bayi had taken a shower before or after calling the police. This was because, when officers arrived at Bayi's home to take his statement, he was wearing a bathrobe, not the workout clothes he should have been wearing during his morning jog. In response, Bayi explained that after discovering the body, he immediately ran home to call the police. Then he stepped into the bathroom, took a quick shower, and changed into his bathrobe. Detective M.O., however, clearly didn't buy this explanation. The reason was simple. When the responding officers arrived at Bayi's home, they noticed that neither his body nor his hair showed any signs of moisture. He didn't look like someone who had just taken a shower. Detective M.O. suspected that Bayi had taken his time showering before calling the police. But would a person who had just discovered a corpse really think to shower first before making an emergency call? The only reasonable explanation was that Bayi was the killer himself. He had showered to wash off any evidence of the crime and then called the police, pretending to be a shocked witness. However, Detective M.O. didn't voice this suspicion outright, nor did he press further on the matter of the shower. Instead, he changed tack and asked Bayi whether his wife, Monica, had seen him make the emergency call. Bayi replied that Monica had been in the bedroom at the time and hadn't seen him make the call. This answer raised more red flags for Detective M.O. According to the police report, Bayi made the emergency call from the bedroom. If Monica had been there, how could she not have noticed? When questioned further, Bayi initially wanted to refuse to answer on the grounds of personal privacy. But under Detective Mo's relentless questioning, he finally gave in and told the truth. According to Bayi, he and Monica had been having marital issues. They had been sleeping in separate beds for over a year. As a prominent public figure, Bayi didn't want others to know about the problems in his marriage. That's why Monica hadn't witnessed the call. She was in a separate room. Detective Emo wasn't convinced by this explanation, but Bayi had already lost his patience. He realized that the detective was treating him like the prime suspect in a murder investigation. Furthermore, Detective Emo had promised that their talk would only take 10 minutes, but that time had long passed. Bayi insisted on leaving immediately, citing an upcoming speech he was due to deliver at the charity event. However, Detective Emo completely ignored Bayi's request. Based on his years of experience, he had already come to a preliminary conclusion: Bayi was likely the killer in both cases. Not only were there many inconsistencies in Bayi's statements, but he also displayed emotional instability throughout the interrogation. Think about it. If he were truly just a witness who happened upon the body, why would he be acting so nervous and erratic? To further pressure Bayi, Detective Emo brought up the first case, the murder of a young girl near a slum that had occurred half a month earlier. As mentioned earlier, the two cases were strikingly similar, and during the time of the first murder, a patrol officer had noticed a luxury car parked near the crime scene. The presence of such a vehicle in a poor neighborhood was unusual and eye-catching, so the officer had instinctively jotted down the license plate. After the incident, investigators traced the plate and confirmed that the owner of the car was Bayi. In other words, not only was Bayi the person who found the body in the second case and reported it, he was also present near the scene of the first case. What were the odds of that being a coincidence? Confronted with this information, Bayi explained that on the night of the first murder, he had visited his sister-in-law, Monica's younger sister, to deliver Christmas gifts to her children. He had also had a few drinks while there. On his way home, feeling tipsy, he parked his car near the slum and rested for a while on a roadside bench. Upon hearing this, Detective Emo immediately dispatched officers to verify Bayi's alibi with Monica's sister, while he continued his questioning. Detective Emo then asked Bayi why, if he had visited Monica's younger sister, Monime, Monica hadn't accompanied him. Bayi hesitated again and gave a vague answer, finally citing privacy as the reason he wouldn't explain further. However, the officers who had gone to verify Bayi's story at Monime's house soon returned with new information. It turned out that there had long been tension between the Bayi family and Monime's family. The two families rarely interacted, only meeting on special occasions like holidays. That's why Monica hadn't accompanied Bayi when he went to deliver Christmas gifts. Though this explanation cleared up Detective Mo's immediate doubts, he still suspected that Bayi had deliberately gone alone to Monime's house on the night of the murder to create a plausible alibi for himself. After all, the crime scene was near the poor neighborhood, situated between Bayi's and Monime's families. If Bayi could be seen near Monime's house, he would have a solid excuse if anyone spotted him near the crime scene later on. While this theory made sense, Detective Emo knew that Bayi would never admit to it, so he shifted his approach. He began questioning Bayi about the cause of the rift between the two families. After all, Monica and Monime were sisters. How had things gotten so bad that they barely communicated anymore? Seeing that Detective Emo was determined to get an answer, Bayi reluctantly revealed the truth. He explained that Monica had developed an interest in her brother-in-law, the husband of Monime. They often exchanged flirtatious glances, and while Bayi didn't know for sure whether they had an affair, Monime quickly noticed the tension between her sister and her husband. This caused a huge rift between the two families, leading them to have little to no contact in the past year. Detective Emo wasn't ready to take Bayi's word for it. He immediately instructed his officers to go to the charity event across from the police station to bring Monica in for questioning. When Monica arrived at the station and was questioned alone by Detective Emo, she initially refused to answer whether she had an affair with her brother-in-law, citing personal privacy. She then claimed that, on the night of the first murder, she had no idea her husband had gone to Monime's house. She only remembered that Bayi returned home at 3:30 a.m. the next morning, disheveled and in a bad mood. Monica's testimony gave Detective Emo a boost of confidence, as the autopsy report confirmed that the victim in the first case had been murdered at around 2 a.m. that night. In other words, Bayi had plenty of time to commit the crime. After finishing with Monica, Detective Emo returned to Bayi's office and confronted him with his lies. Bayi had claimed that, on his way home from Monime's house, he only stopped in the poor neighborhood for a brief rest on a bench. So why did he not return home until 3:30 a.m.? Under the pressure of Detective Mo's questioning, Bayi finally admitted that he had visited the red light district in the poor neighborhood that night. In fact, over the past year of his separation from Monica, Bayi had visited the red light district more than once to satisfy his physical needs and to fill the emotional void he felt. Detective Emo wasn't surprised by this confession, as the police had already confirmed that Bayi frequently visited the red light district. What was more alarming was that Bayi had a specific preference for younger women, and, coincidentally, the mother of the first victim was a prostitute in the same district. Detective Emo suspected that Bayi had targeted the victim, who was with her mother in the red light district, seizing the opportunity to assault and kill her. With this realization, Detective Emo decided to stop beating around the bush. He confronted Bayi directly and asked, "Do you have a particular preference for young girls?" To this, Bayi suddenly broke down emotionally, angrily accusing his wife Monica of lying and insisting that he had never seduced Camille. Wait, who is Camille? It seems that Camille's relationship with Bayi was far from ordinary. Seeing Bayi lose control and refusing to disclose who Camille was, Detective Emo had no choice but to return to Monica's room and ask her about the nature of the relationship between Bayi and Camille. When Monica heard Camille's name, she realized that the family secret was already out, so she stopped hiding the truth. It turned out that Camille was Monime's daughter, and therefore Monica's niece. Camille was only 13 years old. During a family gathering a year ago, Monica had personally witnessed Bayi and Camille acting in an intimate manner. Since then, Monica had suspected that the two were having an affair. In reality, the reason Monica had grown distant from her sister's family and separated from Bayi wasn't because she was attracted to her brother-in-law. It was because she couldn't accept the fact that her husband was involved with her own niece. From this, it was clear that Bayi had a particular fondness for younger girls, and both of the victims were underage. Bayi obviously had both the motive and the opportunity to commit the crimes. The problem now was that, although all the evidence pointed to Bayi, the police still did not have direct proof to definitively link him to the murders. To resolve this, Detective Emo asked Monica for permission to search the villa she and Bayi lived in. The police had already confirmed that the villa was under Monica's name. After much hesitation, Monica finally agreed to Detective Mo's request. She was already tired of the hollow relationship with Bayi, and felt it might be better to end this facade of a marriage once and for all. With Monica's permission, the police carried out a thorough search of the villa and quickly found numerous photos of underage girls, including pictures of the two victims in their daily lives. Based on the angles of the photos, it seemed likely that Bayi had taken them. Clearly, Bayi had known the two victims, and although the photos didn't directly prove he was the killer, it was becoming increasingly difficult for him to explain himself. Trapped in the police station, Bayi finally gave up resisting after seeing the photos of the girls found in his villa. He confessed that he was indeed the one who had killed the two victims. Just as Bayi was confessing the details of his crime, a female officer suddenly barged into the interrogation room, calling Detective Emo out. She informed him that a patrol officer had just captured a man in a park who was in the process of assaulting an underage girl. On this man's car, they had found photos of the two victims at the time of their murders, along with other evidence such as hair and skin flakes. Furthermore, the suspect confessed to the crimes during interrogation, admitting that he was the real killer of the two girls. Upon hearing this news, Detective Emo was both shocked and confused. As he looked through the one-way glass at Bayi, he noticed that Bayi was speaking slowly and carefully, considering each word he said during his confession. It was clear that Bayi was trying hard to fabricate his story. Detective Emo finally realized that his initial assumptions and biases had almost led to a wrongful conviction. The man sitting in front of him was not the murderer after all. It was just a series of coincidences that had nearly landed Bayi in trouble. Filled with regret, Detective Emo felt too ashamed to continue questioning Bayi. Instead, he allowed him to leave the station without further interrogation. Monica, upon learning that Bayi had no connection to the two cases, felt a mix of emotions. After they left the police station, Monica wanted to hug her husband and congratulate him for clearing his name. However, Bayi refused. The reason Bayi had been wrongfully accused and interrogated was deeply connected to Monica. Bayi had been a friend of Monica's father. When Monica was just 14 years old, her father passed away, and it was Bayi who helped fund her education until she graduated from university. Afterward, Monica began a romantic relationship with Bayi, and despite their 30-year age gap, the two eventually married. After the marriage, Bayi treated Monica like an angel, transferring most of his assets, including the villa, into her name. However, Monica was suspicious and stubborn by nature, and she was convinced that her husband had a preference for younger girls. Because of this, when Bayi gave his niece Camille a necklace at a family gathering a year ago, Monica immediately assumed that the two were having an affair. No matter how Bayi explained, Monica refused to believe him and trusted her own judgment. This incident not only drove a wedge between Monica and her sister's family but also caused a prolonged cold war in her marriage with Bayi. After the couple separated, Bayi sometimes had to go to the red light district to relieve his frustration. In addition, Bayi met several girls around the ages of 13 or 14 while doing charity work. He became close friends with them and took many photos of them, including the two victims. This was because Bayi saw the image of his wife, Monica, in these girls when they were younger. However, there was never any inappropriate behavior between Bayi and these girls. It was much like when he had funded Monica's education when she was just 14 years old, he never thought of taking advantage of her. Bayi had always hoped to have a daughter with Monica, but that wish had never come true. When Bayi discovered the body of the second victim and realized she was a girl he knew, he was immediately overwhelmed with sorrow. He instinctively ran home, rushed into the bathroom, and splashed cold water on himself to calm down. Only then did he change into a bathrobe and dial the police, which, unfortunately, raised the police's suspicions. What he never expected was that his wife, Monica, would also suspect him of being the murderer. She even allowed the police to search their villa, where they found the photos of the girls he had taken. Bayi felt completely exposed, as if his private world had been laid bare. In a state of utter despair, Bayi eventually succumbed to Detective Mo's psychological pressure during the interrogation and confessed to the supposed murders. Of course, Monica still didn't fully understand Bayi's emotional journey, and Bayi no longer had the desire to explain anything to her. This story is based on the 2000 Hollywood movie The Third Miracle. The film features very few scenes and characters, relying primarily on dialogue to drive the plot. The suspense is maintained until the very end, making it a classic mystery film at the time. Though its structure and content are relatively simple, the movie raises thought-provoking issues. On one hand, it showcases the dangers of presumed guilt. Even with the most meticulous reasoning, a lack of direct evidence can lead to false conclusions. On the other hand, it also highlights the dangers of personal prejudices and biases. Detective Mo, from the very beginning, subconsciously assumed that Bayi was the killer because, in Mo's mind, a well-dressed, upper-class man like Bayi must be a hypocritical predator who could have committed such heinous acts against young girls. Monica's biases also nearly destroyed both her marriage and Bayi's life. The despairing reality is that it seems almost impossible to break free from prejudices and biases throughout our lives. We are constantly battling these biases, sometimes against others, sometimes against ourselves. Alright, that's all for today. If you enjoyed my explanation, don't forget to like the video. See you next time.